Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, good evening, good morning, good day. Okay. Can you see the slides on your screen?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
So, yep, so we're on to day 2 now, and I'll just spend a little time now to recap or review some of the key points from yesterday's talk, which will then lead into today's material. So first and foremost is, if we call ourselves a Buddhist or we want to learn the Buddha Dharma, essentially we should understand that the aim is for us to learn from the Buddha, and eventually we want to become equal with the Buddha. So that's one, this role model we have, our founder, is not someone we can never be in that sense. So the Buddha also hopes that when we learn from him, eventually we will also become a Buddha just like him. So that's the one marvelous thing that I find in terms of being a Buddhist. You know, we can become equal with our founder eventually. Now, when we begin this path of practice, you'll start to understand that there's actually a lot of practices we need to undertake. So there are many paths that we can choose. And according to the Buddha Dharma, particularly the Mahayana teachings, you know, we don't need to discriminate between which path is better, which path is more superior, because eventually all these paths, if we practice it with the Bodhi mind, can lead us to Buddhahood. And the differences in many of these paths are really to cater to the different spiritual capacities of each being, and also at different points in time or in different stages of your progress. So when we begin this path in earnest and we want to head in the direction of Buddhahood, then we will definitely come across the Triple Gem. And the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, they are the foundation of the Buddha Dharma. And so we need to make sure that we ourselves properly learn and understand what is so great about the Buddha, what is so precious about the Dharma, and what is so, you know, important about the Sangha. And therefore, why is it do we call them the Triple Gem? And why is it that we should take refuge in them? If you don't understand the Triple Gem properly, then you won't have the desire or the motivation to take refuge. And even if you do take refuge without understanding them properly, you won't gain the full benefits. So when we talk about taking refuge in Buddhism, it means that we take the Triple Gem as our place of refuge. So we should learn eventually to turn to the Triple Gem when we need assistance. Of course, you know, if your car breaks down, you don't go calling the Triple Gem. That won't help very much. Although you probably could call, you know, some Sangha members. They could probably give you a hand. But what I'm talking about is in situations where, you know, or even have to talk about the point of, you know, going through the dying process. But when you're really sick and you're lying in bed, you need to be able to reflect, you know, because at times like that, when you're all alone, who can you really turn to? And from my experience, in those times when you're alone and there really is no one else to help, recall the Buddha, recall the Dharma teachings, and think about the Sangha. eventually, when you do that and you turn to the Triple Gem in those times of need, you will start to realize how wonderful it is to have taken refuge in them. And they can really give you the power and the strength to find some solace in yourself. So the Triple Gem has many virtues and merits, and those virtues and merits are always made available to sentient beings. But we need to play our part in taking refuge, in learning about the Dharma, in practicing, in order to access those benefits. So, you know, I think it's a bit like when your parents, you know, say if your mum's a really good cook and she makes a really yummy meal, she can put it before you on the table, so it's there for you. But if you don't eat it yourself, if you don't put in that effort, you don't play your part, the nutrients from that meal can never nourish your body. So some people have complained and said, oh, Buddhism talks about how the Triple Gem is so magnificent, but, you know, whenever I need help, they're never there. And it's not that the Triple Gem is not there for us. It's that we ourselves have created obstacles through our karma, our ignorance, and so forth. So our view of life will affect our spiritual practice. And if we are able to fully understand and accept cyclic existence the way the Buddha taught us, then we will definitely be able to have the motivation to seek refuge and to take refuge in the Triple Gem. Now, for many people, if you start to observe the people around this in the world, the people around you, and even your own experience in life, there can be many obstacles to finding Buddhism and taking refuge. Sometimes it's, you know, our own ignorance, our own skepticism. So as I said myself, you know, after coming across Buddhism, I still had that worry and fear that, oh no, this temple my friend brought me to, is it going to turn out to be some evil cult that's lurking behind the facade and so forth? So not only is it that we have doubts when we begin to look for a place of refuge, but just the way the world has become, you know, there are many worldly temptations that feed our defilements, that feed our greed, that feed our desires, and so forth. And we become engrossed with chasing a lot of those worldly happiness that we then neglect our spiritual practice. And of course, when we hold erroneous views, we can be led astray as well. So in terms of when we try to look for our spiritual path, what suits us best, we need to slowly train ourselves to be able to observe ourselves, observe the things around us with an objective view, and try to take out our own personal subjectivity from looking at when we look at things. And the way that Venerable Yin-Shun teaches us the process in a way of searching for the right spiritual place of refuge, he starts to look at all the possibilities or the key possibilities that are available. And so, you know, most people look to the heavens. The idea, the concept of, you know, some plane, some existence that is better than ours, you know, the heavens, the gods, it's not something new. If we look at, you know, history and the different cultures, there's always that concept of some higher power, some greater place. But if based on the Buddha's wisdom and his ability to see all the various levels of existences in our three realms, he tells us clearly why the heavens, even though they are very happy places when you're born there, they're not true places of refuge, because heavenly bliss will come at the cost of our spiritual progress. And then, of course, if you go to the lower levels where you have the spirits and the deities, yes, because they are a different type of existence, they have powers that we humans don't have. And so we tend to call them supernatural powers. And a lot of us can become, inspired or sometimes they instill fear in us because of those supernatural powers. And so, again, you look at the different cultures, people do worship all these different types of, beings and demons and so forth. But always go back to Confucius's, advice is respect the spirit. But it's best to keep them at a distance. Now, if you start to look at all these different places, worldly pleasures, the heavenly realms, the spirit realms, and so forth, and then you start to compare them with the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, you'll start to realize that the triple gem really is the only place that we can entrust our life to. And our life means not only this life, but our future, our whole existence, our ultimate liberation. All religions will claim that they are the best, they are the real one. And if you look at, for those of you who have had experiences with following other religions, their teachings naturally tend to bring people into that thought that this is the proper religion for me, or this is the proper way. But a lot of that comes from fear. I remember when I was in high school and we were forced to go to scripture classes, and the only option was Christianity. So we had Protestant clergies, we had Catholic clergies, we had Roman Catholic, and a lot of all these, but no matter what, they were all under the Christian umbrella. And the way they taught us, because they knew that we weren't Christian, I claimed that I was Buddhist, just to kind of stir them up. And they gave us the harshest father, and the first thing he told us was, because you don't believe in God, you'll all go to hell. And, when you tell a group of teenagers that you're going to go to hell, and a group of naughty teenagers at that, he's going to get it back at him. And we weren't very happy with that as well. So we then looked at each other and we asked him, so does that mean, if we go to hell and you go to heaven, we won't have to listen to your talks anymore? So it was basically trying to, scare us into becoming Christian. And a lot of the times, even though I've had friends who've converted to Christianity, and they convert because they think it's, their own free will. But when they start talking to me, it's because they fear going to hell. They really believe that if they don't follow God, if they don't believe in God and become a good Christian, they will be condemned to hell for eternity. So even though they feel that it's their personal and free choice, in a sense, if you look at it from a very objective view, they've been brainwashed in a way to believing and accepting that faith because of fear. And that's the beauty of Buddhism, because the Buddha teaches us to look at things with rationality, to look at things with in an objective way and in a logical way. And only with logical and rational analysis of all the options available to us can we properly determine for ourselves what is the right path in the long run. And it is important, therefore, to actually study all the spiritual practices that are available. Read them with an open and impartial mind, and then you can see things more clearly and make the right choice for yourselves. So now we will move on to today's talk, where after yesterday's talk was about, looking for a place of refuge and then coming to terms with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So now we'll start to look at the Buddha gem and learn a bit more about why the Buddha gem is so good, so precious, and something worthy of our trust. And here, let me just move that. So the verse here begins with, the righteous Dharma is their body. Omniscient wisdom is the tool they rely on. Their wisdom is like the full moon on a clear autumn night. Homage to the Buddhas, most honorable among bipeds. So the word Buddha is from the Sanskrit language, and it means awakened one. Now, what a Buddha awakens to is the righteous Dharma, which can also be translated as the wonderful Dharma. Now, Dharma refers to that which has principles and rules that do not change or become irrelevant under any circumstance. Now, this Dharma is the truth that has the qualities of being both subtle, profound, ever-present, universally applicable at all times, and absolute beyond relativity. Therefore, Dharma is also the absolute truth, and this truth is both righteous and correct, and that means there is no bias in this truth. Only those who perfectly awaken and completely awaken to this righteous Dharma can be called a Buddha. Therefore, a Buddha's body is comprised of the righteous Dharma, and this is what is often referred to as the Dhammakaya. Now, what this means is that a Buddha is the complete manifestation of the absolute truth. So, how does a Buddha perfectly awaken to this truth? It is because Buddhas have wisdom, and it's not just any wisdom, it's an omniscient wisdom that is completely absent of any defilement. Now, because this wisdom is omniscient and pure, therefore, the Dharma that it is able to realize is also perfect and pure. And this Dharma is called the most perfect Dharma realm. And here, Dharma realm is also synonymous with Dhammakaya. The righteous Dharma abides nowhere, and yet it is present everywhere. So this means that the Dhammakaya does not diminish when one is deluded, nor does it increase when one attains realization or enlightenment. Only with this omniscient and undefiled wisdom can one actually awaken to the pure and righteous Dharma. Therefore, all Buddhas rely on omniscient wisdom to attain Buddhahood, and hence this type of wisdom is also called Buddha's wisdom. A Buddha is the unification of the Dhammakaya and Buddha's wisdom. Now, this can be explained with a simile. A Buddha's wisdom is like a full moon, and when this omniscient wisdom realizes the righteous Dharma, the situation is like a clear sky on a full moon night. That means the night sky is clear of any cloud cover, and so the moonlight shines brightly. And under this situation, the sky, the azure sky, under the moonlight is exceptionally clear. So if you haven't really noticed, the next time we come to a full moon cycle, take a look outside. You'll find that if you have a clear sky on a full moon night, it can be so bright that you don't need a torchlight or anything, and you can move around quite easily outside at nighttime. I remember once when I went camping with friends, we had a full moon night and it was so bright and clear. We were playing soccer in the middle of the night with no lights at all, but we were able to see each other. We were able to see the ball. So this example of a full moon shining brightly throughout time and space when you have no cloud cover is quite exceptional. So keep that in mind when you see the next full moon come around. Now, with this simile of the full moon, Venerable Yin-Shun is trying to explain to us, to show us that omniscient wisdom, this wisdom of the Buddha, can illuminate everything, even in darkness. Now, with such wisdom, one can thoroughly awaken to the righteous Dharma. It is said in the sutras, Bodhisattvas are like the clear and cool moonlight. They abide in transcendental emptiness. So at the stage of being a great bodhisattva, these beings are already praised so highly. So of course, once they attain Buddhahood, this wisdom is even more profound, more pure. Now, the Dhammakaya and Buddha's wisdom are both complete and perfect in the transcendental sense. And in this respect, the Buddha gem is also most worthy of being our place of refuge. When we say homage, it means we pay our respect, we honor, and we cherish. And this reflects, and when we want to honor something, it's not just something we hold in our hearts and minds. We can also reflect our respect through our actions. And so we often see the actions of prostrations, bowing with our bodies, or praising the Buddha and his virtues with words and language. And of course, sincerely revering and having confidence in the Buddha, and that is done with our hearts and minds. Now, we should use the actions of both our body, speech, and mind to show our respect and willingness to take refuge in the Buddha gem. And when the line says most honorable among bipeds, this is to praise the Buddha, and the word biped can be interpreted in two ways. One interpretation of biped refers to humankind. So a Buddha is the most honorable among humankind, and hence the line says most honorable among bipeds. Now, this interpretation can be deduced from the saying in the Samyukta Agama Sutra 1007, where it says, possessing right awakening is most honorable among bipeds. Born as a horse is the most superior among quadrupeds. So the word biped relates to the number of legs a species of animal has. Now, the other interpretation of the word biped is more symbolic, and this is to reflect the perfection of wisdom and virtues. So it is not only the Buddhas who have great wisdom and virtues. At the levels of the great bodhisattvas, these beings also possess great wisdom and virtues. However, among all the great sages that have wisdom and virtues, Buddhas are the most honorable. And so we can interpret the line, most honorable among bipeds, in this sense as well. Now, the word Buddha is also a title for a sage. who has attained perfect awakening. So that means anyone who has perfect realization of the righteous Dharma is also titled a Buddha. And therefore, the more people who make the vow to learn from the Buddha and actually undertake the practices, then the more Buddhas there will be. From the aspect of time, countless numbers of Buddhas will appear throughout the 3 time periods of past, present, and future. In our present time, we have Shakyamuni Buddha and his teachings. Going back in time, previously, the sutras tell us that there were Kashyapa Buddha, Kanakamuni Buddha, Sikkim Buddha, Vipassin Buddha, and others. And moving into the future, we can expect Maitreya Buddha, Rudita Buddha, and others. The Buddhas that have appeared in the past are innumerable, and so too are the number of Buddhas that will appear in the future. Now, from the aspect of space, we have the 10 directions of north, south, east, and west, the in-between directions of southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, and the directions above and below. The number of worlds in each of these directions are countless, and so too the Buddhas that appear in those worlds. For example, if you have read the Amitabha Sutra, it tells us that in the eastern direction, there is the Akshobhya Buddha, as well as the Medicine Buddha, and many more. And it also tells us that in the western direction, there is the Amitabha Buddha and many others. When we sincerely want to learn and practice the Buddha Dharma, we should take refuge in the Buddha gem. And this means that we not only take refuge in one Buddha or 2 Buddha, we take refuge in and we honor all the Buddhas throughout time and space. Nonetheless, from our own personal perspective and from the perspective of our world, the world in which we live at this present time, there is one Buddha that we should particularly take refuge in and honor. And that Buddha is our founding teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. And so the verse says, Buddhas of the 3 time periods are countless. So too are the Buddhas in the 10 directions. His great compassion brings him to our defiled world. Homage to the Shakyamuni Buddha. So when Shakyamuni Buddha was still on the Bodhisattva path and practicing as a Bodhisattva, he actually didn't make the vow to be reborn in a Pure Land. Instead, he made the vow to practice and attain Buddhahood in a defiled world, because the beings in such a world experience great suffering and urgently need help and relief. Such a vow stems from Shakyamuni Buddha's great compassion and wanting to relieve sentient beings from suffering and hardship. And it is this great aspiration that enabled him to also calmly bear all forms of suffering and hardship while practicing in this world. The great aspiration captured in the Chinese phrase, "If I do not enter hell to save those beings, then who will?" This is perfectly displayed by Shakyamuni Buddha. Our defiled world is said to be undergoing the 5 periods of turbidity, and Shakyamuni Buddha chose to attain Buddhahood here in our world for the sake of delivering us from suffering. Now, for some of you, you may not have come across the 5 period of turbidity and what it means. In the Buddhist scriptures, the 5 period of turbidities are 5 time periods of great suffering on earth. And these periods are 1, the period of the Kalpa turbidity, And this is where human lifespans become very short. And there are many natural and man-made disasters that bring harm to all humans. Excuse me. The second is the period of the view turbidity. And this is when the righteous Dharma completely disappears and many wrong and evil views begin to proliferate, bringing forth many unwholesome and harmful behaviors. The third is the period of affliction turbidity. And this is when sentient beings are heavily engrossed in their unwholesome defilements, such as lust, greed, hatred, vengeance, so forth. And as a result, they engage in all forms of deceptive and evil behaviors. The fourth is the period of living beings turbidity. And this is when sentient beings delight in evil. They have no concept of filial piety towards their parents, teachers, elders, and so forth. And no one believes in cause and effect. And so no one thinks about cultivating virtues or undertaking charity work. Now, the fifth is the period of life turbidity. And this is when the lifespan of living beings reduce to around 100 years or even less. And this is all due to the amount of bad karma that beings have created. So that's just a quick summary of what the 5 turbidities refer to. Now, over 2,500 years ago, Sakyamuni Buddha was born in ancient India. He then renounced his worldly royal status and all his possessions to focus on his spiritual practice, and he eventually attained Buddhahood. After this historical event, our world, which was full of evil and darkness, was able to gain the light of the Buddha Dharma. The Buddhism that exists in our world stems from Shakyamuni Buddha, and therefore, from this particular aspect, we owe boundless gratitude to him. The greatness of Sakyamuni Buddha is not only praised by us humans. The Buddhas in the 10 directions also praise his virtues. And again, it is recorded in the Amitabha Sutra that all those other Buddhas also praise his unfathomable virtues and merits. So therefore, after we decide to take refuge in and honor all the Buddhas throughout time and space, we should also particularly pay respects to our founding teacher, the Sakyamuni Buddha. So this means that when we take refuge in the Sangha, we take refuge in all Sangha members. And here, the word Sangha has the special meaning and refers to the community of great bodhisattvas and Buddhas. So among the members of this great Sangha, towards our own teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha, we hold a special gratitude. So you need to remember that when we talk about the Buddha gem, we're referring to all Buddhas throughout time and space. But the Buddha is also part of the Sangha. So Buddha, in terms of the Sakyamuni Buddha, he is part of the great Sangha of the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Now, this next verse adopts the ancient sages' praise of the Buddha gem, which is to praise the 3 virtues possessed by every Buddha. And the 3 virtues are having great wisdom, perfect wisdom, having boundless compassion, and purity. And here, purity refers to the ending of all defilements. And so the verse says, with perfect wisdom and boundless compassion, having ended all defilements without any residue, all 3 virtues are equal among all the Buddhas. Manifested differences are used as skillful means. So now let's go through these three virtues one by one. In terms of the virtue of wisdom, a Buddha's wisdom is perfect and omniscient. So this perfect wisdom allows Buddhas to realize both the universal nature of all dharmas, that is, the universal nature of all phenomena, as well as the unique nature of each and every individual dharma, such as their special characteristics, their appearance, their functions, and their relations with other dharmas. This realization also includes the aspect of both time and space. In short, such perfect wisdom allows Buddhas to thoroughly understand the many characteristics of all dharmas from all aspects, and so Buddhas are also called all-knowing. The inability of sentient beings like ourselves to resolve most of our suffering is simply due to the functioning of our ignorance. A Buddha's wisdom is perfect and omniscient, and therefore Buddhas can liberate themselves and also apply the wondrous function of wisdom to help sentient beings be liberated too. Now next we come to the virtue of benevolence. A Buddha's great compassion, his boundless compassion, is to deliver beings from suffering. And this compassion is not limited to one person or a single matter or a particular race, place, or world system. Instead, this great compassion arises for the sake of all worlds, all beings, and to resolve all suffering and hardships. This great compassion is so vast and deep that it flows right to the very core of every Buddha and can truly be described as without exception. And this is because even at the stage of a bodhisattva, like the Avalokiteshvara bodhisattva or the Kishtagarbha bodhisattva, their great compassion and vows as a bodhisattva are already extraordinary, let alone when they accomplish Buddhahood. Now, again, you may think, well, if the Buddhas are so compassionate and all-knowing, how come I am still stuck here? I'm still stuck in cyclic existence. With this, in terms of this question, we must not blame or complain to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and say they're not helping us enough. Rather, we need to reflect on our own lack of merits and good karma. The Buddhas cannot give us liberation like granting a wish. They're not some genie that, comes out of a magical lamp when we rub it. The Buddhas can only guide us with the Dharma. The rest of the path is still up to us to actually walk it and accomplish it. Now, the third is the important virtue of purity. Now, there are some beings who may have much knowledge but lack compassion. Then there are some beings that emphasize compassion and love, but they neglect to develop wisdom. Then there are also some beings that have both wisdom and compassion, but their virtues cannot be regarded as perfect if they have not completely purified their afflictions and defilements. That means only Buddhas have removed all obstructions due to ignorance and karma. Their purity is so thorough that there is no residual trace of defilement at all. Now, when we talk about defilement, it can be grouped into two categories, and these are defilements arising due to ignorance and not knowing the truth, and the other is defilements arising due to our karma, which relates to our past actions and their consequential results. Now, both aspects of ignorance and karma can create obstructions to our practice and our progression on the Buddha path. Now, when we say residue, without traces of residue, or defilements and no traces of residue, this is referring to the repetitive functioning of a certain defilement from time without beginning, such that it becomes a habit. So, in layman terms, this is a bit more like a subconscious working of some sort of a habit that we develop. Now, the Buddha's disciples that have attained arahathood, these people, these beings, have ended their defilements. But unlike the Buddha, who's ended all defilements without any trace, without any residue, some arahats still have residual traces of defilement. And there are stories that highlight what this residual trace of defilement can look like and what it means. So, in a sense, when we talk about residual traces of defilement, one way to think about it is like if you have a perfume jar, and once all the perfume is used up, the jar is empty. But even without a drop of perfume in that jar, there's still the lingering aroma of that particular perfume. So this is sort of like the traces of defilements that we're talking about here. So for these arahats, they have gotten rid of all the coarse defilements, the defilements that can create karma that keeps them stuck in cyclic existence. So it's like all the perfume being used up. But there are traces of defilement. So that's like the lingering aroma that is left when you just have that empty bottle. And so some examples that you can come across when you read the sutras are, there are some arahats who tend to use language that can be disrespectful, or their movements are a bit too lively for what is expected of an arahat and a sangha member, and so forth. So you need to understand that when we talk about these residual habits, these traces of defilements that arahats may possess, these are extremely subtle, and they should not be misunderstood to be the same as the coarse defilements that create karma and brings beings into cyclic existence. So one example, one story that I've heard quite a few times, and I think is quite both humorous and funny, both quite funny actually, is there was this particular arahat, and he was on his travels. So, back in the Buddha's days, the Sangha members generally travelled around. And this arahat was travelling, and he came across a river, and the river had a river spirit that was in charge. So he then decided, I need to cross the river, but I don't want to get wet and dirty. So he called out the river spirit and said, "Little slave, make me a path so I can cross." So the river spirit did as he was asked. But remember, in yesterday's talk, these spirits still have defilements. So he was a bit angry that this arahat called him little slave. The reason why the arahat, without thinking, would use that term and name for the river spirit was because in their past lives, that particular river spirit was this arahat's slave. And so over those lifetimes, the arahat had gotten so used to referring to this particular being as his little slave that it was just second nature. It was his subconsciousness that would refer to this spirit as little slave. So the river spirit, being grumpy and angry about this, didn't take it lying down. He went and filed a complaint to Buddha and told the Buddha what happened. So Buddha then summons this Arahat and tells him, "Did you do this? Did this happen?" And the Arahat said, "Yes, I did. I am so sorry. I will apologize." So the Arahat then turns to the river spirit and says, "I'm very sorry, little slave." So even in his apology, without even thinking, that same use of language pops up again. So this was one example that our teachers gave us about these residual habits. So it's not that the Arahat meant to be disrespectful or to look down upon the river spirit. It was just out of habit, a habitual karmic habit, that he refers to this particular being as his little slave. So in this sense, only the Buddhas have completely ended all their defilements and have gotten rid of all residual traces of defilements as well. And only this can be regarded as being most wholesome and pure. Now, in some other religions, they will claim that their gods or their rulers or their creator are pure and wholesome. But if we objectively study their sacred teachings, there are instances where there will be displays of rage, where supposedly these gods, will cast down punishment to people. And when we think about this type of punishment, because that particular god or gods were provoked, can we really say that they are pure and without defilements? So we need to start to look at these things carefully, because if an all-knowing being was pure and wholesome, they shouldn't display this type of arrogance or violence or cruelty. Now, when we take refuge and have confidence in the Buddhas, this is not done with blind faith, nor is it to create some type of family relationship with the Buddhas. So for Buddhists, the principle to bear in mind is that whoever is able to perfect all their virtues, develop perfect wisdom, and have this great compassion and purity, then we should honor and take refuge in them. Now, the only beings who are truly able to perfect all their virtues are Buddhas, and therefore we take refuge in the Buddhas, and we do not take refuge in other teachings, other gods, other spirits. These three virtues of wisdom, benevolence, and purity are found equally and universally in all the Buddhas, and they are most pure and perfect. So it is not possible to say that Buddha A has greater vows than Buddha B, nor should we say that Buddha X has greater wisdom than Buddha Y. The reason is that if between different Buddhas there were discrepancies of greater, smaller, more or less, then that would indicate that there is imperfection. Now, if there is an imperfection, then that particular being cannot be a Buddha. And that is why it is said that every Buddha has the same accomplishment and all Buddhas are equal. Nevertheless, for those of you who have read quite a few sutras, you'll then reflect and say, but hang on, there are recorded differences, in terms of this Buddha has a body of this size, which is much larger than that Buddha, or the lifespan of this Buddha is longer than that Buddha. The condition of this Buddha's pure land is better than that particular Buddha, or the number of disciples the Buddhas have are different, and so forth. So these differences, we should understand that they are manifested by the Buddhas merely as a way to cater to the different spiritual capacities of the different beings in the different worlds. It is not the case that the true virtue of each Buddha contains differences. So we should be mindful of this and not make discriminations between the Buddhas unnecessarily. So looking at the time, we've got about 10 minutes left. This brings me to the end of the discussion on the Buddha gem. So I think I might end today's talk here, and tomorrow we'll go through the Dharma gem and the Sangha gem. So we've got 10 minutes left. I can open up to take questions, or if anyone wants to provide any comments or share their experience with taking refuge or searching for their place of refuge, we can have some discussion now.
I have one question, Venerable, please.
Yes.
I did not get the number 5 of the 5 period turbidities.
Yeah, okay. Let me go and look for that. That should be. Let me.
Was that the one reduced lifespan to 100 years or less?
Yes, yes. So the life turbidity. So that's about the life turbidity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're all afflicted with that.
Well, that exactly. So it's according to the sutras, we are undergoing. We are in one of these 5 periods already. So when we think about our lifespan, you know, what we know is that living to 100 is already a very long time. And we have some people who live for much longer, if you go through the Guinness Book of Records and so forth. But according to the Buddhist sutras, there are times when, you know, a world system is so peaceful and so virtuous that the lifespan of the beings there are counted by eons. So in comparison to that, having a lifespan of just 100 Earth years is very short. So this is what these 5 turbidities are trying to highlight. If we look at, you know, a lot of these aspects, short human lifespan, a lot of natural man-made disasters, a lot of evil views, wrong views, the disappearing of the Dharma, which can also refer to the disappearance of, you know, wholesome teachings, and so forth. We see that in our world in the present day as well. And, you know, in a sense, we can actually see the situation getting worse with more and more natural disasters happening more frequently and conflicts starting to happen as well. So yes, we are being afflicted by one of these periods of turbidity at the moment. Any other questions, comments, sharing?
Yeah, I find the notion of equality very appealing, that those who follow the path to where it leads, all Buddhas are equal. I think that's compelling.
Yes.
Other religions, as you say, there is an authoritarian flavor to it. They tell you what to think and what not to think, on pain of being cast into hell. And I never found that appealing at all. Life's difficult enough without having to deal with that burden. So I find this very broadly to be very appealing. And also the notion of mindfulness. The present is all there is. It's just very good. I like that.
Yeah, yes. So that's probably also due to your past karmic affinity with the Dharma. And therefore, when you hear about these teachings, you know, your past virtues are coming into play. Because when we think about it, some people read the Buddhist teachings and they actually don't like it. And some people read the Buddhist teachings and fall in love with it. This is all due to, you know, the wholesome virtues and the good connections we have made with the Triple Gem in the past as well. Yeah. So keep nurturing that good connection, that wholesome karmic connection, so that you can continue to have this connection with the Triple Gem into future lives as well. So can I just ask, has anyone not taken refuge yet? Like undergone the ceremony? Silence.
Well, you had one hand raised.
Oh, hang on. Let me try and open up the screen. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's okay to let me. Maybe if I stop sharing the screen, I'll be able to see you all. Yes.
If you're on your phone and you swipe left or right, you'll see all of us stacked up one on top of the other.
That's what she's got now.
Yes, but I see you all now. Yes, yes. Yeah. So, you know, as much as, you know, I am deeply devoted to the Triple Gem, so much so that I became a nun. When you listen to these talks, you know, one thing that I really fear is being too pushy, because I hated that. I resented that when I was in scripture classes during school. So what I do hope is when you listen to these teachings, you know, think about it for yourselves. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Faye's word for it. Don't take Michael's word for it. Start to think about it for yourselves and see whether there is any logic, any reasoning to this. Do your own research until you can convince yourself. So I'm just here providing you with guidance as part of my duty as a Sangha member and as part of my vows in practicing the Bodhisattva path. But definitely you won't be able to gain much benefit from it unless you also put in some effort to research and study and just think about it and reflect on it, even in a lot of minor daily activities. Then you'll really see that there is a lot of benefit to the practice.
Your style is not pushy at all. It's actually quite soothing and authoritative and confident. So don't worry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I have one comment and one little story, Venerable, if I may.
Yes,
so I
yes,
think,
of course.
Yeah. So the comment about refuge that kind of stays in my head is that it kind of sets up a connection for you that would persist in any, you know, following existences, right? So even if, you know, you're born in, you know, like I was born into a Catholic family, but ended up finding the Dharma, you know, at some point, hopefully in the future, you would still make that connection with the Dharma. The second story is about my taking refuge, which I did take at Bodhi Monastery, but I had been doing meditation for a long time, but it was not, you know, in the Buddhist tradition, really. I mean, I guess it was mindfulness of breathing, but I knew nothing about the Buddhist teaching. So only after about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months of interest, I had the opportunity to take refuge, and I did. And it was for me, you know, I guess the causes and conditions came together because obviously I've been devoted to it ever since, you know, even though I hadn't had any lengthy relationship, you know, or study with the Dharma at all. you know, but I mean, up to this point, it'll be 20 years next year. And all of this study and listening to the teachings and meditation. And I mean, I can obviously say that this was the right thing for me.
Yeah. So that's, I've had many stories of people, particularly people from the West, compared to the people from the East. You know, as an Asian, a lot of us grew up thinking we were Buddhist. And I say thinking because even though I'd always fill in the form saying that I was Buddhist at school, I wasn't really, because I didn't know anything about the Buddha. I didn't even know Buddha was Indian. I always thought Buddha was Chinese. So that was a big shock to me, you know, when I started to learn Buddhism properly. But for many people, particularly those of you born and raised in the West and also in a different religion and culture, I've heard stories of people that once they hear the Dharma, you know, immediately when someone tells them, do you want to take refuge? Without hesitation, they will say, yes, register me. And then after that, they're just super energetic, not crazy, but they're just very diligent in their practice. So that resonates with what you said about your own experience. And all I can say is, you know, even though in this lifetime you think you had no connection to the Triple Gem, but to be able to click and develop that confidence and faith to take refuge so quickly, and then to allow that commitment to carry you into the practice and keep you going for, you know, 2 decades now. Happy anniversary. that is part of the beauty of, you know, taking refuge and creating that karmic connection in the past. So for me, I'm definitely in the basket where I probably didn't make such a good connection or something, because like I said, it wasn't until like maybe 3-4 years after I started learning Buddhism that I had the courage and confidence to take refuge. Yeah. So
I have to say something. Oh, it's done?
Yes.
I have to say something. I have the same feeling like Jane was. When I first learning Buddhism, somebody took me in there. I said, what is this going on? There's no God here. And then Yan-Rong told me, just like when you go to the kindergarten, you have to open some door to get into it, then you stop doing it. So I listened to him and I did it when I feel comfortable and devotion since I take the refuge and the 5 precepts. Even maybe I did not do it, the 5 precepts 100%, but I always thought about it, and this is, I shouldn't do it. This is like, oh, I have done that. I better do the repents and things like this. I think that's a help to the everyday peace life. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yes, we will go through that in the last talk when we look at the actual act of taking refuge and how it also embodies and includes taking up the precepts and so forth. So definitely
make yourself into the faith and the determination you want to be a good human being. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
I always tell every person that come to the Bodhi monastery who just come in and said, do I have to take a refuge before I study? I said, no, you have to understand what does that mean. Then I always give them this simple, just like I said, Yan-Rong told me, just like you're going to the kindergarten when you're going to school. This is it. And then people take it that way easily instead of, like I said, I always said, where is the God? I did not see it. Where is this? That's just so when I first beginning to understand, because everybody talk about God and all this kind of thing, isn't it? But you come into the Buddhist lectures, there's no God here. So I don't know what it is. So
yeah,
it is sometimes you have to some what you call skillful mean to tell people what this is mean. I think this is a good lecture. I like this very much. Yeah, so I learned something. Next time I will say to people, not, no, there's no God here. Get out of here.
Okay. We'll do the 3 bows, and then you can keep talking afterwards.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
3 bows to the Buddha. Bow to the teacher.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.